Hey, so welcome back. Today I am going to be walking you all through a Blaze themed cake. So apparently Blaze is a cartoon on Nickelodeon. Yeah! So I've already filled and crumb coated the cake. And here you see me just flat icing. There's multiple ways you can flat ice. Some people use a piping bag to help get the icing even. Some people start on the top or on the side. This is just the way I prefer to do it. I mostly start on the side. I throw a little bit on top, and that's just start the covering process. It has taken me many years to perfect flat icing, so if you're just getting started, definitely don't give up. Just keep going, and I promise you will get the hang of it. Here I probably am heating up my bench scraper, and I'm going around and just trying to get an even coat. You'll see some craters in the side. That's no big deal. You just kind of smooth it out, and then you can reapply more icing. You can see I'm doing that with the icing I take off on the other side. And then you just smooth it back out. You just keep working until it's done. Sometimes you can put it in the refrigerator to let it firm up if you're not having an easy time with it. And then you just go back and add some more icing and keep smoothing until you get the flat ice that you desire. So you'll see me get eye level with the cake. What I'm doing here is making sure the sides are going straight up and down and that there's no angle in the side of my cake. For the top of the cake, using the offset spatula, that's what I prefer. You just want to be real gentle with it, because if you push too hard, then you're going to kind of get a slope on the side of the cake where the corner of the cake meets. So it's just gentle pressure that I'm using and just scraping off the excess icing. Now it's time to get started on the fondant accents. Here I am rolling out white fondant, and it's going to create a ribbon around the bottom of the cake. What I'll use to make sure that the fondant is even is the pasta roller that is an attachment for my KitchenAid mixer. So you can see it's nice and even and the same thickness all the way through. I use a ribbon cutter. I used to use a ruler before I had this ribbon cutter, but this makes it so much easier and faster. But if you don't have one, like I said, you can just use a ruler and cut along the side of that. So I always say there's lots of math in baking, but there's also some math in decorating. Here I want to make sure my ribbon is long enough. So I will be using the formula for circumference. So C equals 2 times pi times R. This cake is an 8-inch cake, so my R is 4 inches. And that formula will give me about just over 25 inches. I will add a couple inches for the width of the icing. So I always clean the board. Here I'm just cleaning off the extra icing that's on the board with a paper towel. Nothing fancy, but it's best to start with a clean surface. Now I found what is the back of my cake. My mom would say that there is no back to a cake, but there is. And I start my ribbon in the back because I want the crease, because it won't be completely smoothed out, to be back there where you can't see it. So I just rolled my ribbon onto the cake. It attached. I didn't have to use any water. The heat from my hand will attach it. And now I'm starting the black squares, because this is a monster truck cake. So we're going to have a black and white checkered ribbon. I'm using a square cookie cutter for this, or a fondant cutter. You can find square cutters in the clay section. You can even hand cut the squares. I used to do that, but the cutters definitely save you lots of time. So even using cutters, your sides won't be perfectly smooth. So here I'm taking a paring knife. I'm going back to each square and I'm straightening the sides a little bit and cutting off any frayed edges. Now it's time to apply the squares. You only need a tiny bit of water. You really don't need that much. If you use too much, the black will start bleeding out behind the square and get onto the white, and then you'll just have a big mess. So a lot of times you can dip your brush once and not really have to re-dip it for a while. You can see I'm also starting in the back of the cake again. This is because the squares may not match up perfectly. Once in a blue moon, you will get the squares to match up, and that's great. But just in case they don't, I always start in the back. These ribbons always feel like a never-ending process, but they add to the cake. And I'll go back around here and kind of straighten up some more lines and just try to get it as perfect as possible. So here it was getting late and I decided to do things a little bit out of order than normal, so I'm going to go ahead and go to the top of the cake. Sometimes I make the characters out of fondant or gum paste, but that tends to be more expensive and time consuming, and what little kid doesn't want a toy? So this go around, I'm going to put a toy on the top of the cake, and here I am about to start the process of dirt.
Oh yeah!
I have some chocolate cupcakes that I crumbled up. I'm putting the icing on there to kind of give them some more height in the back because I don't want it to be a flat surface for a monster truck. And so then I'm just going to keep adding some chocolate crumbs here for my dirt. And because dirt is different textures and colors, I'm adding some mini chocolate chips to it, just kind of look like a little bit of rocks. And it just makes the cake more fun. And now it's time for some mud, which in cake is chocolate ganache. So I made some chocolate ganache. I'm just kind of scattering it all over. There's no perfect way of doing this, but it does help to have all these details. I'll put some of the chocolate ganache under where the wheels are so that the toy does not go rolling off of the cake. Even though there's dirt and chocolate and all this stuff on the cake, I don't want my cake to look messy, so I'm going to go back through, get the crumbs off the side of the cake and off the board, and continue on. So I'm pressing the toy down into the chocolate and then making sure it's angled right so that the front of the cake, you can see his little face when I finish the cake. So I'm adding more mud to the cake and the monster truck because the monster truck doesn't need to be completely clean. So why not add some mud? And actually a little bit of mud got on the red part and I left it because I thought it just looked better that way. It was just a small little detail and I kept going with it. Because it was getting late the night before, I went ahead and stopped and put the cake in the refrigerator and then woke up early the next morning before Jaslyn was awake and before work to continue the process. So here I'm going to be making the flame that goes with Blaze. A lot of times I will print out a piece of paper that has the image on it, but because this is a flame and have the image in front of me, it's a simple design that I can just do by hand, just by looking. It does take a lot of practice to get to this point. So if you don't feel confident in doing something like this just by hand and by sight, go ahead and print out the size that you need, and then you can just trace around your image. Like I said, more detailed designs, that's what I do, because it just saves time and makes it look nearly perfect. This is a layered design comprised of 3 colors. So what I did was I rolled out my orange fondant. I make sure that there's enough cornstarch underneath so that your design at the end of the day, not at the end of the day, at the end of finishing it, it's not sticking to your surface and then pulls apart and rips and misshapen. So I attach the yellow to the orange. If you need to use water, you can. And then now I'm just going around the yellow and cutting out the orange design. Just a little bit wider than the yellow because it's only a thin edge. So moving right along in the sped up version of cake decorating, I'm on to my 3rd layer, my 3rd color, blue. So I'm repeating the same step that I did with the orange and cutting out the flame and attaching it, and oh, there it is. It's nice and quick for you all, and I'm finished with that flame. We're going to move on to the number 5 that goes on top of it. This little boy is 5 years old. Again, I'm freehanding this number. I don't always have a cutter that's the right size that I need. Sometimes, like I said, I do print it out, but this go around, I am just going to freehand it. I start with a block to kind of keep the perimeter of the number all within the size that I need, and then I just start cutting away. I will say my years of drawing bubble numbers and letters in elementary school prepared me for this moment. So it's funny looking back to see what you used to do and how it's helped you in the future with what you might be doing. Here we go with the layering process again. If you know anything about blaze, the colors of the word blaze are orange and the background is blue. So that's why I am making this number 5 to look similar to it. Not exactly, but similar to the actual logo. Once I finish the 5, I will attach it to the flame again with just a little bit of water so that the blue doesn't bleed. And you'll see my blue bled a little bit, so I fixed it. And if you want to, you can also put your fondant piece in the refrigerator before you apply it to the cake so that it firms up and doesn't stretch on you. Mine kind of dried a little bit, so I didn't have an issue with that. But that is a little tip that you can put your fondant pieces in the refrigerator. They'll still be pliable, but they won't stretch and move and change shape on you. You don't want that happening to you after you spent an hour making a logo. Here I'm just adding a little bit of water to the logo, and mainly what this is doing is it's smoothing out some of the edges by kind of melting the fondant so that they're not frayed or bumpy. Sometimes you see the imperfections once you get it on the cake, and so I'm just trying to smooth out my edges and make it look nice and tidy. Depending on the cake, sometimes I'll write happy birthday on the cake if it can be in the design, but a lot of times I put it on the board. One of the perks of putting it on the board is if you totally get it off-centered and just doesn't look right, you can wipe it off and try again. I actually didn't have to do that this time, so that was awesome. But I just want to make sure that happy birthday is on there with the person's name, because it just makes it more personalized, especially for a little kid to see their name on a cake is actually kind of a big deal. And now I'm going to add some more details. I probably looked at the cake for a while and decided, do I add chocolate and dirt to the board or do I keep it clean? And I went ahead and added the details. Details are my favorite thing of pretty much anything that I see. So you have to make it look perfect, but not perfect at the same time because it is dirt. So I thought that this was a nice added touch to the board because it is a monster truck cake. And even though there's a back, I still added the details to the back. So here's the finished cake. In the comments, let us know how long you think this cake took me to make.
Ready? Please like and subscribe. Hit the notification bell after subscribing. Follow us on Instagram. See y'all next week. Bye-bye. Hiya!